And please, next couple, which I don't know very much about this theme or the results, but from the title, I take it that you still have very good self-confidence. You had splendid ideas, and you developed splendid ideas. Please come forward. Whatever happened later, I don't know, but they were and are still splendid.
Hello, Jan-Åke.
Hello, Ivind.
Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you.
After all these years.
Yes, some years has passed.
You look good.
Thanks.
And it's nice to meet again in this nice environment, back at the playground where we started working on bioinspired energy conversion. I don't know, we don't have the slide up here, but
No.
The theme was bioinspired energy conversion, and that's what we're supposed to talk about. But before we start, maybe we should say a few words about who we are. Who are you?
So, I'm Jan-Åke Nilsson, or mostly called Jocke. I work at the Department of Biology at the unit of Evolutionary Ecology. And I work with small birds nesting in nest boxes. Blue tits, marsh tits, grey tits. And mostly physiological issues around their life. And you, Eivind?
Yeah, I'm a professor of internal combustion engines. Something that you hardly dare to tell people these days. People either fall asleep or they get murderous when you talk about that. That's my subject. And you may wonder what's the common denominator between us, but it's that we both work with energy conversion in different ways. I do it in technical systems, and you do it in living systems. And the group was contained a lot of people working with energy conversion in everything from the quantum mechanical level to the big scale, really.
How did you get the idea for this in the beginning? You were the coordinator and you made contact with the rest of us.
Yeah.
But how?
It started actually, I was a little bit bored with my job during a period. And I'm originally a natural scientist. I come from the physics department. And now I'm working in a very applied field, and I feel you can get a little bit too familiar with applied research after a while. It tends to you end up in a rut and you do the same things over and over again. So I wanted to find ways to boost the creativity and get new ideas for the research. And it actually started with reading a book called The Medici Effect. I don't know if anybody has read it. It's an excellent book by Franz Johansson. The Medici Effect is about how it contains a number of examples of how new and exciting ideas often come out in the cross-section between different fields, seemingly unrelated fields. There are lots of really interesting examples in this book. And I thought maybe this is how we should do it. We should try to find people who work with energy in really different fields, get together and try to lower the associative barriers and try to expose ourselves to different ideas and maybe get some what do you call that in biology? Cross-fertilization or something?
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
So I was one of those that Eivind found up and told me about this. Yes, energy and so on. That's something that I work with. But theoretical physicists, nanoscientists, combustion enginists. How could I fit my blue tits into this scheme? How did you think there?
Actually, I used the university homepage and tried to find people working with that had energy in their research descriptions. And surprisingly, everybody that I called were very enthusiastic. They thought that this sounds like a great idea. We should do this, and I'm in, totally in. And the only people who weren't so enthusiastic were actually the people back home at my research group, who thought that this looked like a really non-productive way to spend your time. But then we got the money, and then that changed as well. So.
Yes, so, and I agree. It was very easy to accept this offer. Think being away from all the ordinary duties for a day and just discussing, that's something that's really that you long for. And we started off extremely enthusiastic, I think. We were there and we started to discuss the first days, and yes, we put the goals there, and the goals were, of course, we should shift some paradigms here. So the first discussions was mostly about which of the paradigms we should shift first. And we started on some sort of road towards that, the paradigm shift, that was the goal. And we had, of course, very important is to have presentations about your expertise. That's what we are going to use in this whole enterprise towards paradigm shifts. We had, I think it was you, Ivind, that introduced refrigerator poetry.
Yeah, that was one of the. The whole idea was to try to get the creativity flowing really strongly in the beginning. So we were working with a lot of creativity techniques. Even during the introduction, I mean the first meeting, we had some researchers working with creativity to come and tell us what it is and how we can get it going. Some of those ideas were pretty productive, I would say. We had some speed dating activities where we were meeting. During a couple of minutes, you were supposed to tell the other person about your research, and the idea was that you were supposed to come up with at least a seed for an idea for a joint research idea. And then after a couple of minutes, you would shift to the next person. But then we had these other ideas. The refrigerator poetry was, we took applications that we had written, the titles, we cut them up in pieces, put them into a bag, shook it about, and then we took out words at random and tried to make sense out of a new title for a new proposal.
So when we sat there with wind turbines, nanoparticles, and metabolic rate in blue tits, and shuffled those words around for a while, I don't think so much concrete came out of that. But what came out of that is that we learned to know each other even better, that we could argue and discuss for our words there, and of course these are the important thing. Nanoparticles are so small, and so on and so on. So all these activities, I would say, was important to illuminate ourselves that maybe it's not the paradigm shift that we should aim for here. There are other nearly equally important things to do. And I can say why one of these speed dating, it was 2 minutes, was it?
I think, yeah, a couple of minutes.
Yeah. And the first one I had actually planted a seed that I have pursued now. And that was that it was a guy from medicine that were working with metabolomics. I didn't know the word existed even. And now I'm working with metabolomics.
So that outcome from just the first few days of
yes.
the thing. And I think those activities, looking back, some of them were a little bit on the wild side and not very productive in terms of the actual ideas that came out. But as you say, I think it helped the group grow together, and we were not afraid of coming up with stupid ideas because it's we had already done that, and we had a very good working atmosphere in the group. Usually, when you come into a group and you work with strange people that you don't know before, there is usually after a period you always run into conflicts and so on.
And in that respect, I think that 1 day a week is essential to have it this often. Otherwise, it would have been started all over again and again.
Yeah.
So this 1 week schedule is really good, I think. Yeah. But then, of course, with these aims that we entered this theme with, and then we had done this refrigerator poetry for a while, then the November frustration came. So you said that we should talk a little about our hardships also. And that was gloomy November day, raining. Where are we? We are not close to changing any paradigms so far.
Not even one.
Not even one. Not even have a seed for starting some sort of research collaboration either, more or less. So then we started to realize that, at least I started to realize that it's not necessarily so that the whole group are going to go into some sort of research program that we all contribute to. We are different expertises there, and we started to work in smaller groups. There are so many borderlines in a group composed in this complicated way, with energy as the overarching word. So it's not always the same borderlines. There is borderlines for example, with medicine. There are borderlines with computer engineering and modeling and things like that. And all these were now more easily, when we realized that we were not going to change anything, the whole group, then we started to work in small groups. And that really was rewarding, I think. But importantly, we always formed these smaller groups that sort of crystallized out of these initial discussions. But we always made sure that after working in the small group, you go back into the big group, and then you report back, you discuss what you have talked about and your plans. And that was also actually when some of the ideas came out, when you reported back. But there's one thing that I came to think of after we met earlier this week. I don't know if you remember this, but during that November period, when it was so gloomy, one Thursday, we met on Thursdays, one Thursday, Anders Hedenboy showed up, and one of the colleagues at Andersson.
Yeah, Andersson, sorry. And he usually he's dressed very casually, but this morning he came in a tweed jacket and a lamb wool sweater with a Cambridge emblem on the sweater. So I wondered, so what's the occasion? And he said, well, it's no big deal, but my former supervisor at Cambridge, he got the Nobel Prize. And that's when I thought maybe we should start doing something, if we're aiming to change some paradigms. So we went from this really open, creative phase, and still creative, but more focused work in focused groups. And as I said, some of the really unexpected ideas they came out through these discussions. And there's one thing that I remember where there was one group talking about. These were medical researchers. They were working with diabetes, and it's related to the energy conversion in cells in the body. And then they were talking about why do we get diabetes, and there were no really clear. There are several hypotheses, but then you came up with this question from the other side of the table. So, hey, why don't birds get diabetes? How did you come up with that question?
Yes, I knew about the glucose levels in birds, because that has been measured in a few birds, not very many. And then they say that diabetes you have when you have 7 millimolar glucose in the blood. 7? My birds have 20 or 30. How does this work? And that was something that we, of course, then it started again, a paradigm shift here. I'm going to solve the diabetes, yes, with my blue tits. And of course, it's not that easy. And we continued for a while these discussions, and I still continue discussions with one of the members of the team. But what has happened is that I have managed to integrate this glucose problem for the birds into my grant proposal from last time, for example, at the Research Council, and I got money for it. So I'm working with it. This is just a small part, of course, but I think if we should have started off trying to apply how birds do it to mammals, then we needed to have had about at least half a year full-time research about where we are standing now to be able to create a very good application that would, in its own sense, have any chance. And that might still happen. But we have started with, or in our own research programs, to include these ideas that came from this theme. And that's important, I think.
Yeah, I think the important thing, you plant some seeds, and then over time you water them, and you see some of them grow into something. And what I thought was really interesting with this idea was that the medical researchers, they were used to working with mouse models. They choose mouse models because they are similar to humans, and then they study diabetes doing that. But this idea was looking at the problem from the other side, taking something that is very different from a human being and trying to understand why they don't get diabetes. I sort of had some hopes about that growing into a joint research program. May still happen, but one of the problems we talked about was that in these applied research fields, like my field or medicine, who wants to fund really cross-disciplinary research? The evaluation committee will have either be biologists or medical people. So that's one of the problems, I think.
But I think also, and now it's time for a speech. Yes.
Speech?
Yes, I'm going. I'm not involving you in this speech.
Okay.
Okay. So, for me, with taking part in this theme, was an opportunity to do what I think that we should do much more at the university, and that is to have time to sit down, discuss crazy or not so crazy ideas over not just over coffee break, but over a day, for example. In everyday academic work nowadays, there are so many evaluations to do, there are so many board meetings to attend, there are our Q20, for example, now, that will involve a lot of work for us. So we forget about this. The essence of doing science at the university is to discuss with your peers. Wild discussions, the wilder the better sometimes. And that was the main gain for me. So we have this oasis, the Pufendorf Institute, where there is still some possibilities to have these discussions in a free-thinking university and all this stuff. A lot of that is going on here at the Pufendorf Institute. That's what was my speech.
Okay.
But then I would also like to say that it's so easy to measure, how do we measure success?
That's one of the things that I've been thinking about when you think about this theme. After we finish the theme, you get these questionnaires where they want you to report in how many papers emerge from this theme. It's not the main idea of the the institute, but still you get these questions about did you apply for any joint projects and so on. And there hasn't been a lot of that happening after our project. So I've sort of felt that maybe it wasn't a big success, this theme, because when you measure it in terms of these metrics that we use, there is no concrete outcomes. But whenever I meet people who were involved in the theme, they spontaneously they say this was the highlight of my academic career. This was really the most inspiring year of my career, and it's all down to these discussions that we had. The free discussions, you can spend time, you get the funding so that you don't have the obligations at home. You can spend 1 day a week working with just generating ideas and discussing scientific issues, which I think is what science should be about, and something that we do way too little in everyday work.
And during all these discussions that we had, of course, you get ideas that you might not know of, but they are in here somewhere, experiences of talking to lots of people, discussions, you have to defend your stand, why is blue teeth so damn important? And all this adds to your scientific knowledge, to your scientific heap of ideas. Sometimes you get them and you don't know where they came from. They have just been merged inside here somewhere with something else. And I think that's how it should be measured. How much has that improved or helped my scientific thinking and how I manage to think of problems and how to solve them? Because all these discussions, they are included in those if you happens to solve some problems sometimes. And in that respect, actually, there is an old saying from Eslöv, where I come from, that is something like, it's not the goal that is important, it's the road towards the goal. And that, I think, is very important here.
Yeah, okay, thanks. No, it looks. No, I think it was very, very good way to end this famous saying from Eslöv. Sorry?
I was just going to say thank you very much for this very honest and very detailed description of how life in a theme can be, and techniques to come forward. But I noticed that we are pretty good on schedule, so there is place and room for some more discussion with the audience. I start with one question, which is, why didn't you test the possibility to send in an application with combustion engineering and biology, etc.?
Yeah, well, combustion engineering...
Because you say we can't get funding, but you've never really tested the possibility?
We didn't get any great ideas when it came to combustion engines. I don't know what that means, but this idea with trying to merge the perspective of birds into diabetes research, that was something that we thought could be developed into cross-disciplinary work. And you did meet with Cecilia.
Yes. The problem is that when the theme is over, then there is not that free day any longer in the week when you can really dive into this. Then there are all the board meetings again and all the teaching and so on.
You're in too many boards.
Yes, but there are many to choose from, so I think many of us are in that situation. But I think also that I won't say that there won't be any applications. yet, because it also takes some time to digest all this and to talk to others as well, and so on. So maybe it's not forgotten at all.
And to me, it's a good result if it has affected your own research. I mean, that's good enough. Anyone who would like to have the microphone?
So you were aiming for paradigm shifts.
Yes.
But didn't you actually find back to a core paradigm of research in actually finding the joy and debating across the themes? So, I mean, we don't have to invent new paradigms. We have to see what has built knowledge for our society for generations.
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it.
It's and it's a paradigm that should be there all the time, but it's forgotten and so on. So it's nothing that we would like to shift. We would like to shift it up to the surface, maybe from down the cellar somewhere. So that's a good point, and I think that's also a very important task that the institute here helps us to do, to realize that this is the important thing.
Thank you. Yes, I really liked your speech, and I think you're completely right in that we need to have these wider discussions and wilder ideas. We need to, because in order to get to these really brilliant ideas, I think one essential thing is that we have to have the attitude that we need to accept that maybe most of these ideas will not work, and that's okay. If you only go for the short thing every time, then you will get some good research done, but not these really brilliant things. You have to be prepared to try out these ideas that may be brilliant or may be crazy. But you need to be able to accept that maybe they will turn out to be crazy in order to dare to try them out.
Exactly, I totally agree. And that's the arena here, to try out these crazy ideas. And as you said, most of them will probably be just crazy. But some of them will be brilliant. And I don't think we can afford to miss some of those brilliant ideas because of other stuff that we are doing in our ordinary life.